Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's Thursday afternoon here in the Eastern Time Zone, and it's time for the Manufacturer Showcase. And today we have Ray Novak, N9JA, Icom Senior Sales Manager for North America. And nice to have you on, Ray.
Hey, Tim, thank you for having me on here, and good to see you and everybody else on there.
So let's jump right into it. Let's get started. What's new, Ray?
Well, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a slideshow presentation, if you don't mind. I titled it All Things Amateur, and just a little caveat after hearing some of the news recently where an 8-year-old wrote into NPR that show All Things Considered. He wrote into them and told them they didn't cover dinosaurs. So it couldn't be called All Things Considered. So we're not going to cover all things amateur, just a few amateur things from Icom. How about that?
Okay.
All right, Katie. So our friendly little clubhouse there, we're going to cover things about the PW2, the AKM fire, which has impacted amateur radio, not as much as it has the Japanese automotive manufacturers, but we'll cover a little bit of that. The ID-RP Generation 3 D-Star repeaters, the IC705 firmware update that came out almost a month ago, the IC7300, 9700 firmware update, and then finally round out with the AH705. The PW2, I mean, it was gorgeous sitting in the cabinet. Let's see. Wow. Almost 2 years ago at the Tokyo Ham Fair. Got to see it up close, touch it, play around with it, control it with 2 different radios. Unfortunately, it has been put on the back burner. The project has been delayed on it. I believe a little bit more research needs to be done, but it is still a product that we will bring out. No pricing, no availability or anything like that at this time. Probably the thing that I thought that was the most incredible about it was the LAN port on the back of it. So remote base operation is definitely on their mind. The AKM fire. Well, this was a chip manufacturer in Japan that has impacted many different industries, not only amateur radio, the audio industry, the audio and automobile industries have been drastically impacted. They design and manufacture a lot of analog to digital devices, microprocessors. I read an article that said an automobile today has over 700 microprocessors in it. That factory fire has impacted the Japanese automobile industry to the tune of $60 billion. So they're scrambling to find some other chipsets that will work. To give you an idea of the timeline, October 2020, Icom releases the ID52 to the Japanese domestic market. That same month, the fire happened. Bad news was delivered to the audio industry. We announced on 11/27 the product delay. We received FCC certification in December. There were other production slashes across our Lam Mobile industry. And while I say nothing to report, there was just something within the last day or so that in the Japanese domestic market, there will be the ID52 released in the next couple of months. Right now, that is just for the Japanese domestic market. Nothing for the U.S. market. My guess is what's taking a priority in our manufacturing is the Lam Mobile product that these chips are impacting. So right now, nothing new to report for U.S. or anything outside of Japan delivery. D-Star infrastructure. It's been a while since we've had repeaters. We closed them out a little over a year ago. our third generation repeaters looks a lot the same structural wise, other than we're now with the black face on it. But internally, a lot of changes. It's going to be a dual mode, mixed mode, D-Star and FM. So you can start looking to upgrade your analog repeaters with this and run it in a mixed mode configuration. There is an internal controller for the analog repeater. You can set it up with a CW or a voice ID. There is an optional LTE modem that will provide the internet backbone for the D-Star portion of it. I would feel that there would be some experimentation and people will figure a way of interfacing Echolink, IRLP, and other items to the analogs to use that LTE backbone. But here's the biggest change, Tim. We're using the direct sampling from the 9700 for the 2 meter and the 70 centimeter. We will have all three bands, 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and 23 centimeter. On the 23 centimeter, you can either select it to be digital voice as well as FM, or for the DD mode, all in the same box. It's going to be either or. It will not be able to do both simultaneous. Jump over to the 705 One Touch FT8 mode preset. I've been seeing feedback in both directions, pluses, minuses, but for the most part, it seems to be very positive. The feature I like the most in it is the wireless LAN access point. So you no longer need to use a travel router or some type of router to interface wirelessly to the 705. You can go directly to it to do your digital modes with no wires attached to the radio between the computer and the radio itself. New AH705 tuner functions have been added to it, as well as a few other updates that were not documented. We'll cover the same similar firmware updates for the 7300 and 9700, which came out a little less than a week ago. I think it was released on Friday of last week. Oh, and I did forget this on the 705. The scope now has an auto scroll, so there are 3 settings on it. There's fixed mode, fixed scroll, as well as a center mode. So that I've played around with the fixed scroll, and I really like how they made that adjustment. For the 7300, there's going to be a new multifunction dial improvements made. I have not had a chance when all of this was released, dealing with all that cold weather down here in Texas. Well, I used to live in Chicago and had no problem with the weather there. We're just not prepared for it down in Texas, and hopefully tonight we'll get hot water in the house when the plumbers arrive. The AH705, the final item, long wire antenna tuner, but you can use it for a 50 ohm type antenna system. So if you have a dipole that has a coaxial feed into it to a balun, you can use it that way, or you can use it with a couple of wires to make your own dipole with it. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And open for your questions, Tim.
Well, that looks great, Ray. Thank you so much for giving us an update. And we do have some things here in the chat room. And of course, our friend Mark Haynes, M0DXR, says fantastic. Let's see.
It's great to hear from him.
Yep. Greg NC7B is enjoying his Icom radios. You answered the question about the 52A, and we've got Doug is still running an IC7000, and Paul says my first purchased radio was a 730, and he's just recently got a 7300 and loves the difference. And Fred says he's real happy with his 7300, and 4 Zulu 1 Juliet says we have become an Icom family. I have an IC 7300 and a 9700. My son has a 7300. He doesn't know it yet, but we will get him a 9700 for his birthday. So that's awfully nice. And
Yeah, it is.
let's see, we've got Sean is on here, Alpha 5 Sugar Alpha, and says, man, Icom is just killing it with the 7300, 9700, 705 best values in ham radio, and this update just makes it even better. And let's see, how will we know the 7300 is the newest so we will not buy old stock? There's no hardware changes, are there? Right?
Oh, there's always development going on to improve things. As far as being worried, Tim, I think you're more worried about how low your 7300 inventory is, and we're completely sold out. We've got shipments coming in, and unfortunately, they're being delayed because the crazy thing is getting containers.
Yeah, I think what he wants to make sure is that the 7300 he's buying has the latest firmware, but that's it's not possible to keep up with that. Obviously, the last run of 7300s, which is what DX Engineering is selling, we didn't have that firmware from Friday. So
and all the stuff that's coming in right now, since it comes by sea, and right now it's taking almost 8 weeks. I can guarantee you what we're going to start shipping next week is not going to have the latest firmware update. The great thing about it, the firmware update is not difficult to do. If you're worried about losing power, use your computer UPS or put it on a 12-volt battery and do the firmware with battery backup or battery power. I haven't heard of anybody bricking an Icom radio doing a firmware update.
Yeah, and Alan says, what about 7610 firmware updates?
I meant to mention that in the presentation. We don't have any word about that yet. I know I've got one sitting on my desk that I want to have that scroll feature before contest season. So I'm begging for it, but no word yet on doing anything for that. Or Tim, your 7851s. But there again, you guys stay right on frequency.
Yeah, no, they're fine. Jeff, Kilo Bravo 8, Sierra X-Ray Kilo says, after my radio intervention, I was able to get an Icom IC705, and I like the radio a lot. I'm waiting on word as to the availability of the AH705 tuner. No answers as to when available. Any news? Should I not wait and get the MAT 705?
Well, here's an AH705 right here. It surprised a lot of people that it's larger than what they were expecting. But there again, the tuning range will be doing some testing tomorrow with it. But we will be receiving ours later on this month. So we haven't set pricing, but that information should be coming in the next week or so.
And let's see, Chuck says, hi, Tim.
And Tim, I'm sorry. One other thing. I do want to show how easy it is to get to the batteries, because I know there's been a discussion on getting to the 9-volt battery. There's just a simple screw on the back of it. It becomes a waterproof seal, and I just use a little coin on it to turn it, and it's sealed back up. So honestly, I think with AH705 doing coax and then the adapter for your wire, you just do your 2 wires, your hot lead off of this adapter, and then your counterpoise off of this one, you're good to go.
Okay. So Chuck says, I guess I bought the Dinosaur. You got an IC718 now, finding that ARES is doing inoperative nets on 60 meters, and I can see it on my dial, but it's locked out. Plus, I found I can rejoin the Army Mars because the 718 doesn't transmit on their frequencies. I love the 718, but I was starting over since I have been away from the hobby for 30 years and was looking for a good bang for my buck. That's KA3DFK. That's Chuck. Any advice Ray, on opening up the 718 transmitter? Can that be done?
Chuck, get your Army Mars license, send a copy of it to Icom America's technical support department. They'll send you the information on how to do the modification or what the modification is for you to do, so you then will be able to transmit on your Mars frequencies.
Kevin says, I love my Icom radios, an IC7300, two 718s, two IC2730s. It's K3KTB. And from Australia, it's Victor Kilo 4 November Mike. And let's see. Kelly says, I wonder if the new repeaters will be promoted at a great price to make them affordable for clubs.
That is our goal, but we don't have the full details yet. We're looking at should be getting repeaters towards the end of April, beginning of, so somewhere in that time frame, we should have information out there on what we're going to do. It will be limited, so it'll be first come, first serve at that point.
Okay. And Mike 0 Tango Delta Sierra says he's got a 7851 and a 7610 running great in Scotland. And let's see, what are the differences? Paul says, what are the differences between a new and old 7300? Is there a difference? And hardware-wise,
there have been some hardware changes. I don't know all the details. I had heard comments that there was some changes to the battery backup circuit for the clock, but performance-wise, it's going to be identical between the two radios as long as you're doing the firmware updates.
And Paul N6PSE says the IC7300 is the best entry/low-cost radio. And so thank you, Paul. Good to have you on. And KL4 Sugar X-Ray up in Alaska has an IC7300. And KA7 Mike Delta Mike says he loved the 7300 so much he sold it and bought a 7610, and it's really good on CW.
You need a backup. Get that 7300 back.
There you go. How about a new version of the IC706 with the same form factor?
Oh, wow. Right now, what we've got is the IC7100, and I know there are pros and cons and different comments on for or against it, but I'm not in a hurry to replace that radio because, Tim, what's going to happen to sales when a new replacement radio comes out at $12.50 street price again?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you guys are selling the 7100. It's a great multi-band entry-level radio, and those things you guys are selling where? Mid 800s, maybe lower?
Something like that, yep. So, no, that's fine. Let's see, we got Go Icom from EL2BG. Nice to have Richmond on. And Dino says, any plans for the 7851 firmware upgrade? We just have to stay tuned on that. You never know when firmware upgrades are going to come out. And Mark says, walk me through the firmware update for a 7300. Mark, I would ask that you call in to DX Engineering, and we will take as much time as you need to walk you through how to do a firmware update. And,
hey, Tim?
Yes?
There is a firmware update video that George from Amateur Logic TV and I did for his 7700 about how to format the SD card, download, copy it over. It's almost identical to it. The key thing is reading the screen instead of just zooming through it and following the instructions on it to push and hold, not just push the yes button.
Right. And WD8NVN says, will my old IC756 Pro easily connect up with the PW2?
Everything that I've seen will be backwards compatible. That is one thing that Icom takes pride in, is the connection ports. All you've got to do is plug it into your DB7 and DP8 connectors on the back, and it'll go to the DB13 or the 13-pin DIN, I'm sorry, the 7-pin and 8-pin DINs and the 13-pin DIN on the PW2.
Okay, and Lawrence says, will the gateway server on the new repeater be the same for reflector use?
Since the reflectors are third party, no, it will not. And the internal server, what that's good for is if you're doing, say, a parade or some type of race support and you want to put 3 or 4 of these repeaters around to cover a city, you can use the internal servers instead of dragging out computers. But if you're wanting to connect it to US root and be on the global network, run the IRC DDB software and all the third-party stuff, you'll still need to use an external server computer. So that part will be similar to the G2 and G1 hardware.
Okay, and Alan says any 7610 updates. I think we covered that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we got that. And Arnie says K5ARN, hello Ray, love my 7100 with the AH4 and the 7300, and the IC 9700 is on the list. We've got Lima Zulu 1 Alpha Mike Alpha. He loves the 7100 and 7300, thinking about the 705 for WWFF activations. And let's see, Tim said,
even if you're not doing those activations, it's a fun little radio just to pull out and play around with.
WA0 Oscar Fox Mike says, I worked for me 7300, no issues first time. I think that's referring to the firmware upgrade. Let's see, Danny says he's using an old trusted 746 Pro. Maybe when I get richer, I might get the newest and greatest Icom. And Jeff, of course, KB8ZWT, who's a DXE guy, and he's still in love with his 7200. He's got the 7300, the ID880H, and an ID51. And
boy, Jeff's a repeat offender, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's good about that. Let's see, we got Soda Guy here. The 705 looks nice. Still using the 817. There are a lot of options to move to something new. And Jimmy says the IC 9200, will there be a replacement for the IC 9100?
Yes and no. Occupies a little bit more room, but the 7300, 9700 is a great set of twins, and you get an extra band active at a time as far as a replacement for the 9100. As far as any rumors about a 9200, a 9110, or anything like that, no, we're not looking at doing a all-in-one type base station anytime soon.
And November 9, Yankee Kilo, love my 7300 and 9700. And our friend Marty in N1C says, awesome to see this. Icom sets the gold standard for radio performance. That's why they're used by so many of the top contesters. And we've made well over 100,000 contacts at ZF1A without a single glitch. So great to hear you on today, Marty, and get back to studying. Let's see, we got any thoughts of adding a CW decoder to the 7300?
Oh, there's always been all kinds of thoughts about doing that. We do have some CW purists on the engineering team on HF. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to convince them to add something like that when they're like, we can do it so much faster between our ears.
Any reason why the ID52 skips over the 1 1/4 meter band for receive?
Rob, yeah, there is. There's a lot of reasons. We try to produce a product that has a global appeal, and unfortunately, 1.25 is amateur radio only in the United States and Canada. It is a public safety band in Japan and commercial two-way in Europe. So when they look at design costs and everything, they're looking at trying to make the most economical package to cover the entire globe.
And Eric says, has the ID52 been approved by the FCC? Yes, that was done in December of last year. And Robert says, I still have my 761. What is the suggested procedure for replacing the 7300 clock battery? Again, that's better handled, I think, through Icom service call or email up to either Washington or Michigan. And
yeah, if you're on the East Coast, give Matt a call. He's great, Tim. I think he does your stuff, doesn't he?
Yep, he's fabulous. Really.
Yeah, he is. He might be a little backed up at times. Then you also, if you're on the West Coast, our Kirkland facility.
Yep. And we've got Dino says 7300 backup would be much better off with a supercharged cap versus having to power the radio to recharge. And let's see, Jeff WD8 Juliet Mike says the 7851 is definitely a sexy beast. Well, I agree with that. I like these beasts. And Dwight K4 Yankee Julia says he's having a ball with his 705. And let's see, we have another couple. Can a firmware update on the 7100 for color screen be possible? That's K4 Victor Tango Echo.
No, sir, not unless you connect a computer to it to control it. That would be the only way.
And I'm glad Skip is in the chat room here. He says DXE has a firmware upgrade video on our YouTube channel, so you can just look for that. I believe it was Mark W8BBQ that did that a few years ago. Will the IC7610 get the same update as the 705 and 7300?
Don't know. Been begging for it, but have no idea what's on the agenda right now.
And Whiskey 8 Victor India Papa says the firmware update on my 7300 was quick and pain-free, took less than 5 minutes. And Vesco on from Bulgaria says, I do not want to change my radio so often. He's still sticking with his 756 Pro 3. And let's see, November Juliet 4 Zulu says, look, two hams on the same screen. Great live stream. Thanks very much. We're having a ball here today with Icom, and really,
we always get into some kind of trouble when we're together, don't we, Tim?
Well, we try to stay out of it, but it follows us around. And Aaron says, let's see, Aaron wants that ID 52, and VE1VOX here says, I love the 9700 for satellites. And let's see, any plan to add Ethernet connectivity or a headless SDR radio with 7610 features?
Would love to see it, but I have not seen anything coming down the pipe or being designed. One of the cool things, and it was a discussion on social media about doing something Android and iOS related. And the CI5 protocols are all open source. They're available for download to see what all you can do with it. I'm just waiting for a ham to get the desire to write something.
So Alpha Echo 5 Hotel Whiskey says, I received my IC7300 from DX Engineering last month to upgrade from the IC7000. Both are great radios. Love the upgrade to the 7300. And let's see, Red says, I see about 4 or 5 different QRP radios out there that are competitors with the 705. Can you make a case as to why I should choose the 705 over the others?
Yeah, I can. There's several of them. One is it's a great all-in-one box. You've got a band scope on it, not a separate box to drag along and wires with it. With it having the wireless LAN peer-to-peer type connection, no wires to do digital modes. And if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty about it, take a look at some of the videos that OH8STN, Oscar Hotel 8 Sierra Tango November, has posted. He has done so many videos on competitors' QRP radios. it blew me away when he was so excited about what he could do and focus on. And actually, one of his videos, he talks about the things that he doesn't have to take to operate the radio and the things that he can take in its place for weight to keep himself warm. So he's able to run the radio, get full 10 watts out of the radio using one of the solar panel. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the roll-up solar panel it is with the lithium ion battery on it. But he's got a very compelling argument why to go with the 705.
Alan says, I sold my 10 Tech Orion 2 when I listened to my Icom 7300. No comparison. And Peter says, as much as I love a modern Icom, I'm using an old IC260E with a transverter for HFQRP and loving it. I haven't switched on my IC703 for months as a result. That's Mike India 5 Juliet Yankee Kilo.
And there's nothing wrong with the old radios. And what's great to hear somebody mention that is the longevity that the Icom radios hang around.
Right. And Joshua says, is there a replacement for the ID1?
Not at this point. Have talked about it with engineering, but nothing solid on the books to go forward with. I think the main focus is the repeaters, the infrastructure for it, and then we can see what the demand looks like. When you take a look at that mobile, that sold right around $1,000. A 9700 isn't much more, and you get 2 meter and 440 with it as well. So that's what we're going to be looking closely at.
And our friend Jerry, WB9Z, is on. He says, Val, NV9L, and I love our 7851s and the 7610 at home in Illinois. We're putting the 7300 to good use in warm Florida now. So sounds like a lot of Icom love going on there. And let's see, Fred says, will both of you be at the Huntsville Hamfest this year? And if so, will Richard be doing some time with W5KUB live stream? Also always fun to see him there.
Our plans are to be at Huntsville if they have the event. It looks like it's going to happen. As far as Richard and W5KUB, I have no idea.
Yeah, tough to know on that. How can we get feature requests for the next or upcoming firmware releases?
Well, we work closely with Adam Farson and the Groups IO forums that he manages. He's real good about collecting the data and feeding that to myself, as well as a couple of his contacts with ICOM's engineering department. So that, and I monitor those as well. So that's the best place to share your ideas. There's so many different social media avenues out there, so many different groups within those social medias, but stay with the Groups IO and Adam.
And from Norway, Lima Alpha 4, Juliet, Germany Alpha, he says he has the ID51, the 7700, 7300, 7100, and a 705, and he loves his Icom radios. And let's see, my Icom IC706 Mark II is the QRP the best. My first Icom was an IC2AT. And let's see if there are any other questions here. I think, let's see. Aaron says, sorry to ask again, but Ray flashed the ID52A. Is it shipping soon? When? I'd love to buy one from DX Engineering.
Tim, I think you can answer that one now.
Yep, we don't know.
We don't know. They are being released again in the Japanese domestic market because it was already shipping when the fire at the AKM facilities occurred. But when is it going to be available outside of Japan? Have no idea at this point.
Yeah. And last question. Geez, they're still coming in crazy here. Let's see. I just checked, and the IC7610 has Ethernet. Any chance of adding that to the 7300?
Not to the 7300. It's just not physically capable of doing that. That would be a new model. And anytime we have a new model, it goes back up to what the previous selling price was. So,
yep.
It'll be a 1500 radio again.
Dino is asking if there's going to be a replacement CT17 for multiple CIV IO.
I don't see us doing anything else with that. I've seen a few third-party products out there, have not tested them, do not endorse them, but they are out there. But I don't see anything coming from Icom on those.
And what accessories would you recommend for the 7300? Mike, I would suggest you take a look at the DX Engineering website. We put all the accessories right underneath the write-up of the 7300. And if you have questions, just email us or give us a call on the phone, and we'd be happy to help you.
I would recommend all of them.
There you go. There you go. Well, listen, Ray, we could be here for hours, maybe days, and certainly a lot of great Icom stories. And thanks so much for coming on today. We went a little long, but you had a lot to go through, and we'll look forward to you coming back on here in the near future.
Hey, this is the closest thing that I've had to a real ham fest in about 9 months. So it feels good to get out there. So I appreciate you having me on here, Tim, and I appreciate everybody tuning in live. And any questions, hey, contact the guys at DX Engineering. If they don't know the answer, they'll get in touch with either Will or myself, and we'll be able to help you out. Don't forget, tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern time here in the U.S., it's the weekend special, and we will have the spokesperson on for Hamvention to talk about the award winners for the 2021 Hamvention. So that's Ham of the Year, Special Achievement, Technical Achievement, and Club of the Year. So you don't want to miss that show. We'll be on live. We'll be having a good time. And until then, I hope to hear you on the radio. Get on the radio and have some fun. 73 from Icom and DX Engineering. 73, everybody.